Donald Trump famously claimed to be a law and order president, but he's under fire for his administration running a jail where Jeffrey Epstein just died under mysterious circumstances. Donald Trump claims to be the economy president, but as you've seen tonight, that is on edge with the market plunging the worst day of the entire year, closing tonight. And Donald Trump has long claimed to be the military president, but a new group of veterans are now speaking out against him in this video, which you're about to see airing for the first time.
I didn't lose a limb in service for this president to disrespect and not follow the Constitution.
This is the only time I felt like the president was not supporting me as an American citizen, as a Muslim American.
The president had declared transgender people, even though we had a history of serving honorably, would no longer be allowed to serve.
Trump can't be relied on. He lies. Integrity matters in the military.
The biggest enemy right now is sitting in the White House.
I don't think the oath means anything to the current president. It doesn't mean anything to him. He's never served. He's never been selfless about anything.
That film was directed by Hollywood legend and liberal activist Rob Reiner. It features U.S. Army veteran Robert Pearson, who served in Afghanistan as a paratrooper in the 173rd Airborne. Good to see you both. Robert, what made you want to speak out this way?
Well, thank you for having me, Ari.
Sure.
First of all, the opportunity to work with Rob Reiner was an opportunity I wasn't going to pass up. And so an opportunity to get up and use a voice that I have as a veteran. I think veterans across the country have an obligation to use our voice. We have an important one. And anytime I have the opportunity to do so, I'm going to do it. And I'm proud of all the veterans in the video that took that opportunity.
Do you see this as a difference over policy, the way Donald Trump has run U.S. foreign policy and military decisions? Or do you see it as something deeper? And as we just saw some of your colleagues speaking about really what they see as the lack of respect and dignity that he holds the military in.
I think the most important thing that we need to focus on is his inability to uphold his oath to the Constitution. He said he was going to protect us from all enemies, foreign and domestic, and he's not doing that. Our elections were attacked, our country was attacked, and he continues to not do anything to stand up to that. And until he does, he's going to continue to fall short of that oath that he took. And then
finally, before I let you go, why do you think there is this view out there that, well, a lot of enlisted men and women, as well as veterans, do support Donald Trump?
It's a really interesting dynamic. I think that organizations like Vote Vets are doing a fantastic job to make sure that that tide begins to change. You know, the Republican Party has seemed to have a stronghold on the veteran community and the military community as a whole, and I think that's going to start to change. When you start to put voices out on cameras and making sure that veterans are being heard and you can hear the issues and the concerns that they have with the current occupant of the White House, I think you're going to see a shift in that, and I think 2020 is just going to be the beginning of it.
Robert Pearson, thank you very much. Interesting to see you in this project and working with Rob. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir. Rob Reiner, I learned that your new friend, that gentleman, and I have something in common, which is we love any chance to work with Rob Reiner. I'm not ashamed to say it. Thanks for being here. Before we get to a lot of other stuff, what are you trying to say through this? Why is this important and why now?
Well, I mean, if you look at Trump just throughout the course of his 2.5 years of his presidency, he's emotionally unstable. He's not reliable. You see it in the markets. You see it in how he treats people of color and immigrants. You see it with our allies.
Could he have cameoed in Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah, he would have been the guy, hopefully, that would have gone to jail because, you know, the military, they need somebody that they can rely on. You look to a commander-in-chief as somebody you can count on. You can't count on this guy from 1 minute to the next. He has no ideology. He listens to Fox News and makes a decision and then goes back on his decision. He has absolutely no basis for any of his thoughts. So we wanted to put this out because we know there are a lot of people in the military who just don't trust this guy. He's just not a reliable commander-in-chief.
You have been an early advocate for dealing with what Bob Mueller's report and evidence found, the obstruction evidence against Trump. You know, it seems that you were ahead of the politics of Washington. In the Democratic Party. You were very clear and very big on this early. As you know, Pelosi and other party leaders were not. But something has happened this summer amidst all this other important stuff. As you know, and we could report tonight, the Democratic House caucus has now hit a majority of those Democrats back impeachment, 123. That's what's going to greet Pelosi when she comes back into town. Lawsuits continue to get the actual witnesses, not just Mueller, to be forced to speak. Your view of all that, and is the politics shifting?
Well, the politics obviously has shifted. And I think what you'll see, I mean, we had basically one a hearing with Robert Mueller, and everybody talked about his bad performance and so on. But the fact of the matter is, he laid out in no uncertain terms 5 solid criminal acts. And those things, once they're put in front of the American public, you're going to see the politics shift.
Right. People
even
look at
more.
the evidence and they think about that. One more thing before I lose you.
Yeah.
On this very program, you battled the mooch. Take a look.
Why do you think that he lies all the time? Why is that? Why does he lie every minute?
There's different shades of that. Now you're going to say, okay, he's trying to parse it. I'm really not. He is an embellisher of stories. He is a macro wave surfer, if you will. And so he will tell a big tale and a big story.
Yeah.
He defended Trump. Now he says Trump's dangerous and it's got to go. Your thoughts?
Well, I feel bad for the mooch. He's come to the party late. The country hopefully will come to the party and realize we've got an incompetent man in the White House who lies, he's a criminal, and he's a racist. And I don't think you want those qualities in a president. But mooch, come on in. The water's fine.
From Rob Reiner to Scaramucci, from a debate to, as we say in the business, to a collabo. Now that you two apparently agree about Trump, you know, stranger things have happened. It's 2019. I really appreciate you making the time and also telling us about your new Veterans Project, Rob.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.